Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Eric Jenkins. I'm the Account Manager for Connecting Up in TechSoup New Zealand, and I would like to welcome you to the webinar Decisions with Data, which is being presented by Sam Hedbury from InfoExchange. We'll start with just a little bit of housekeeping here. All the lines are muted, so if you've got any questions during the session, just type it in the questions box in the webinar panel, and Sam will be answering those throughout the webinar. I will bug him when we've got a couple, just so that he can go ahead and answer those for you guys. Please note that your comments and questions won't be appearing to the entire group. They'll just be appearing to myself. On the same line, if you've got any technical issues, just type it in the question box as well, and I'll try my best to help you sort it out. Although do note, if you're on a Wi-Fi connection or you have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video on your webinar. So if possible, just close those down just so that you can have the best experience you can today. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that the webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you all within about a week after the webinar ends, and you'll be able to access it from at that point at any time. That's about it from me. So with no further ado, here it is. Sam, take it away from here.
Thanks very much, mate. Yep, it is terrific to be with you all and talking about what I think is, without a doubt, the most interesting topic when it comes to technical service provision within our sector, and that is data. Yay! So welcome to Decisions with Data. For all you who are braving the cold weather with me in Melbourne today, a warm welcome, quite literally warm, because I am freezing. I'm sitting here nursing a warm cup of coffee because it is quite brisk outside. So all of you who are up north and experiencing some quite warmer weather, please feel free to keep that to yourself while the rest of us freeze ourselves silly down here in the eastern states. But with that in mind, speaking of which, there's lots of data available from the Bureau of Meteorology at the moment, which you can use to analyze trends and patterns as well. But we might talk about that a bit later on if you like. But without further ado, let's kick off to today's webinar called Decisions with Data, Business Intelligence for Your Organization. Just to kick off, a little bit about me and how I got into this whole data game. I'm an old NFP social services worker. I started off in this game as a youth worker, working at Melbourne City Mission many years ago, working with vulnerable and at-risk young people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And I did that for some time before going into social housing provision and managing some larger programs in that space, which was an amazing time. And yeah, so for the last 12 years, I've been bouncing around the sector, and I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. I love our sector, and I love the impact that we have. But over time too, I became a bit of a data geek. I studied social research methods and statistics in my undergraduate, and I went off and did an MBA, and I realized there's this real value in how we use our data to inform our practice. And then I started seeing it in action. I remember there was a tool for client and case management called SMART. This preceded SHIP and SRS and all those other things back in the day. And it was my job to gather all the stats of what me and my teams were and my colleagues were doing each week, and the impact we're having. So how many young people we're seeing, what services we were providing. And it was actually my responsibility to feed that information back to my colleagues. And I loved it. I loved it because it was so great to be able to say to them, hey guys, we've worked with 50 young people this week, and of those 50 people, 30 of them had access to some housing because of us, or 20 of them had access to living and life skills, or whatever it was. It was so great because it actually felt like it was a way of acknowledging the work that we were doing. And I think that's a really important and key component of remaining motivated in our sector as well. Most importantly though, and this is something that I'll continue to drive home, is that the more that we look into our service provision empirically, the more we can actually enhance our service provision for those who need it. So we can start seeing where the gaps are, and we can start seeing where our strengths are. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So I loved being able to feed that stuff to my peers, but also being able to see where we were doing well and not as well. I also want a Harley. I still haven't been able to bring myself to buy one, but I'm sure soon enough I'll hit a midlife crisis and I'll buy a Harley Davidson. Now, This webinar actually precedes one of my other webinars called Data Readiness, which talks about setting the foundations of your data infrastructure in your organization so you can really leverage the insights that you can get from having a solid database in the tools that we'll talk about today. So if you haven't seen the Data Readiness webinar, I really encourage you to go and check it out because it's actually a key component to what we'll be going through today. All right, so let's kick off and we'll talk about just a very high level overview about what business intelligence in the not-for-profit sector looks like. And, I'm not going to sit here and do PowerPoint karaoke. I'm sure that you can all read that. But, what's really interesting to me is that the not-for-profit sector has often been thought of as the third sector or the poorer cousin of the public services. But really, NFP organisations are a critical part of the Australian economy and the broader society as well. There are over 600,000 organisations operating nationally, and more than 1 in 15 Australians work in an NFP. Not-for-profits traditionally focus their energies on front-end service delivery activities, but tensions do exist in allocating resources to demonstrating achieving grant outcomes. So we are focused on the front end, but we've always had this tension. I don't need to tell you, if you're sitting in this session today, I'm sure a lot of you has experienced that, finding the resources to allocate towards data enhancement or data management or technology improvements, whatever, can be challenging because we are driven by impact, which we should be. This is making some of the changes that are going on in this sector, though. NFPs require information systems more than they ever have before, and especially business intelligence systems as well. Because if they have those and they're using them well, they can actually reach their best potential, I believe. At a high level, the NFP sector is often considered the well-intentioned third sector, as we said before, but we are far from the little brother. We have a combined total income of $134 billion annually. The largest 10% of not-for-profits have 10% of all income. So that means that those larger orgs, and there might be some of you in there today, you're managing a significant volume of revenue. And to make sure that you're utilizing that as effectively as you can, BI tools are critical to that. Donations to this sector are growing by 2.4% annually, and we're seeing greater and greater demand for roles as they come up from a whole bunch of people who are really interested in moving here, and actually hires 1.2 million staff as well. So we're actually a very big sector. So I think that's a high-level overview of the sector we work at and why business intelligence is so important. But having access to the right intelligence insights really ensures that you demonstrate the impact of your services. It ensures your organization is making the right decisions. It is making sure that you're making informed decisions, and it is making sure that the decisions you're making are based on empirical evidence more than anything. My organization and the people that I work with, we've been working with a whole bunch of really cool orgs, helping them deepen their BI capabilities. And we've witnessed a few things. Business intelligence really is key to supporting your organization define its strategy. And one of the reasons why it does that is because it can actually help you work out where you're operating really well. It also can help out identify where you're not operating as well as you might as well, and what are some of those threats that are coming too. So you might see that there's a whole flurry of new entrants in the space that you've been operating, and therefore there's going to be a greater demand on the limited resources available. So being able to demonstrate the impact of your work becomes incredibly important. Having access to those insights as well means that you can actually leverage those with partners. You can actually look at where you can have greater partnerships across the sector and see where you can complement other areas of other areas of service delivery that some other organisations might be doing as well. We have seen that a lot of orgs are taking up the use of BI products, and funding bodies more than anything are asking for more and more empirical evidence to support funding agreements and funding proposals. There's also this new need that people are asking for real-time data. When I got in the sector, it was okay to report on data that might have been 3 or 6 months old, because that's how much time it took us to capture, manipulate, and then provide to our funding bodies. But now they're asking for weekly and sometimes daily data. So data and business intelligence and making sure you've got the right tools is becoming more and more important when it comes to actually accessing and sourcing new funding as well. But data in its own has different uses for different people. What your management team might use it for might be a little different for what your service delivery is using it for. So we're going to break that down a little bit now. So we have been talking so far on some high-level points about defining strategy, leveraging areas of competitive advantage to seek new funding opportunities or maintain the funding that you actually have. So this is really the focus of senior managers and executives. The other piece to this too is BI, and utilizing BI tools can be amazingly powerful at actually managing your org performance. So seeing where your resource allocation is going and actually making sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck with your crew as well, with your staff. At the middle level, it's great. BI and using BI tools is great for actually identifying those trends in your service delivery, as we talked before, that can be utilized as an area of competitive advantage, but also can be used for other things too. Content marketing is one that comes to mind, or actually working out where your staff could be and should be. We work in a whole bunch of different ways in this sector. It's pretty awesome. And if you can start using BI and BI tools to work out what staff can go where and which staff have the best impact with which cohort that you're working with, and start doing that matching process. Again, I work from that principle of everything has to go back to what's the impact of the service users that we're here to serve. And I believe that BI can be an incredibly powerful tool to be able to help that. And the example that I just gave about looking at matching. So if you're working with one of your crew who have incredible ways of working and building relationships, incredible outcomes when working with young people who might be pregnant or parenting, you can actually start matching up, their free time or some of the time that it's coming up because they're having cases that are closing with new and emerging clients as well. So that's the sort of stuff that I mean with staff management. It's pretty cool. And this is, one of my favorites is obviously, just as I said, to help your frontline staff actually see the impact of their work. If you want to talk about motivating your teams, and if you want to talk about being able to get a collective or shared vision or understanding of your organization and really harnessing that, one of the best ways you can do that is by providing some objective empirical evidence to your team and actually saying to them, this is the stuff that we do. So not only is it great for staff as a motivational tool, but it's also great for managers to provide this to their frontline staff as a way of really reinforcing the importance of their work as well. And just as importantly, the one that I think we kind of focus on easily, because it's the one that just always keeps coming around, usually year after year after year, is the data in your admin teams for compliance and reporting purposes. We can't underestimate the importance of this, but I like to think of this in context where, yes, it is key in terms of managing your data and also generating business intelligence, but I don't think it should be the only focus. I think this needs to be considered one of the other 4 focuses. I think that if we always focus so heavily on reporting and compliance, we actually start diminishing the beauty of BI and using data to demonstrate impact. So it is important. Don't want to say that it's not, but yeah, it's something to be considered in the broader scheme of managing data and generating business intelligence. But compliance, that keeps changing, doesn't it, every year? But let's talk about the good stuff. So that's the high level overview. Last time I did this presentation, I think I spent a bit too much time on that first bit, so I've tried to condense it a little bit. But really the overarching premise of those last few slides is to say that business intelligence is absolutely central to optimizing your service delivery, and also in managing what's becoming a very, very, and has been for a while, I think, a very, very dynamic market, and one that's only going to keep growing, and the need for it, unfortunately, is continuing to grow as well. So that's why business intelligence is important in the not-for-profit sector. So what can you use then to actually start helping you to work out and to get all this insight? This last 5 or 6 years has been an explosion of business intelligence tools. Like, it's so cool, actually. For somebody like me, it's been like one constant Christmas. When I started doing statistical analysis and getting excited with data, really all you had was Excel and SPSS. I remember running my first correlation coefficient in SPSS, thinking it was the best thing ever. And there was this really heavily pixelated graph that came up, and I just thought it was magic. And in Excel, for many, many years, my peers and I would generate some graphs in Excel, which we cut and paste and put on a Word document, which was sent to boards. But that's what we had at the time, and that's what was available, and that was still pretty darn cool. So I don't want to ever diminish how great those tools were in their time, but look what we got now. They're everywhere. It's awesome, and this is only just a small smidgen of the ones that are around. There's some big names there too. I think most of the people in this room today would have heard of Tableau. We've also got Google Data Studio that sits within the broader G Suite, which is getting some more and more traction in our industry, which is very exciting. Down the bottom left-hand corner, we've got ClickView and Plotly, which have been around for some time actually, but not as well utilized in our sector. Chart.js and D3.js, also great business intelligence tools, a little bit more custom products that are used for different sectors. But regardless, the point here being is there is tons of new BI tools around, and the functionality within them is only growing every day. The one that I tend to focus on, though, and the one why you're here today, is our mate Power BI. Now, excuse me for 1 second while I just have a sip of my coffee. Thank you for that. As I said, it's pretty cold down here, so I'm trying to stay warm. Now, the first reason why I'm relatively vendor agnostic. I don't tend to have any preference on a technology solution. I believe in working with orgs to find what solution works for them. This is one of the few that I've got quite a bias towards, if I can be absolutely honest. And the reason why I've got a bias on it is because it's a pragmatic bias. 83% of our sector uses Office 365 or is moving towards Office 365 or is using an Office-based product and will likely end up with Office 365 in the time. There's lots of reasons for that. Office 365 is pretty darn cool. It's also got a very competitive price point in our sector, being relatively free in most cases. And Power BI sits within that application suite quite seamlessly. It's also a very, very mature product that can do everything you need it to do. But there's one other piece to this, and one of the reasons why I recommend it is because I don't think it's anybody's in this room who has any sort of experience in tech. It doesn't come as a surprise when we say Microsoft works well with Microsoft. Same as Google works quite well with Google, and Apple works quite well with Apple. So the pragmatic reason why I recommend Power BI, apart from it being a really strong product in its own right, is that if most of us are using Office tools, this tool will work quite well with the rest of your application suite. But please feel free to try the others like Tableau and Google Data Studio and the rest of them. They're really great products. I tend to focus on Power BI because it's like I said, works well, and it also works with what you've got quite well. It's also a very simple tool that can work with a range of users. So it can start off with those Power BI or those business intelligence and data novices, all the way through to pro. So those who like to do more of that complex data design, or maybe even big data if you're that way inclined. It does have all that ability to do it. The other really great thing about Power BI too is it can actually query. So for all those in the room who might not know what this means, so query data is a nice way of saying reading the data that you have. You can actually query your data in real time. So you can establish what these things are called API links or OData, whatever it might be, and you can actually query data in real time. So that means anytime your data set's refreshed, means that your pretty pictures and your graphs will be refreshed too, which is amazing. It also has the ability to generate some beautiful reports that we'll be able to talk, which I'll take you through a bit later on. And the great thing too is that you can share these internally and externally. You can put restrictions on who can see them. It's pretty darn cool. The other thing too is that it does have the ability to query a whole range of data sources, which we'll talk about in a minute. And to top it all off, it is free. It's hard to argue with that one. It's free with a 365 business or personal account too. So obviously, like any freemium product, you can pay for the pro version or the enterprise version, which gives you a few more pieces of functionality, but you can get quite a lot out of the free product that's available to you. Office 365 is made up of 4 main components: data, visualizations, reports, and dashboards. And I thought the best way that we could give you an overview of how this works and how you can start using this product in your service delivery is actually to go through each 4 parts of these building blocks. We're actually going to build a dashboard today. And at the end of it, I'm hoping that you lot might feel a little bit more confident in just having a play around, start querying some data, and start messing about with some of the dashboard capabilities. So just remember these 4 because they will keep playing out over the next 30 minutes as we go along. So how's everybody going so far? You following? Cool. All right, so let's start off with the first one, data. So this is probably the most fundamental element, what a surprise, of Power BI. This really is just the cornerstone of why it works. So Power BI has the ability to query or read or access, whatever you want to call it, data from a whole bunch of sources, as you can see down there. We've got our standard SQL databases, so we've got Access in there for some of those old Access databases lying around. We've got some of the new stuff with the Azure SQL databases and the Azure SQL data warehouses. So that's the cloud stuff that's been going along more and more. If you're using Microsoft Dynamics as your customer relationship management tool, you can query that in real time. You can also get data from Facebook, you name it. The other really great things is as this product is getting bigger and bigger, more of these data sources are being released every day. But because it is Microsoft and it does have a very deep market penetration, it can query data pretty much from as many sources as you would like, really. Or if it can't do it so far, it will be working down there. There's a couple of key brands here that also need to be mentioned. Salesforce is getting more and more popular. Power BI works quite seamlessly with that, as well as Nav and QuickBooks, MyOb, all those things that are pretty commonplace within our sector. Now, when it comes to the data, there's two key types of categories. There's these things called a Microsoft App Source. They're content packed, so they're actually a hybrid of many different data sources that have been wrapped into one. We're not going to focus on that too much today. This is the entry-level view into Power BI. But then we can actually, as we're talking about, connect and import these data sources that are on your screen as well. So, you can kind of do it in two ways. You can look at importing and connecting data through files. So your standard CSV files or XML files or even Power BI files as well, or actually connecting to these databases that we just talked to. So there's a bit of a difference there between actually importing data. So you might have an Excel file sitting around on your computer or your server or in SharePoint or wherever it might be. You actually would import the data or query the data directly on that data set. Whereas when you're actually linking to a database, it's a little bit more complex, but so cool, because this is when anytime that database gets updated, your graphs and your visualizations actually get updated as well. But that's a connection rather than an importation. You know what we're going to do? Instead of me sitting here and actually just talking about the different things it can do, I'm going to show you what it can do instead. So what you're seeing now is actually I'm accessing some data that I've got sitting around on my local drive. This is this is probably the most basic way to get data into Power BI. So this is the cloud. There's two versions of Power BI available to you. You've got your desktop or app-based Power BI, which is called Power BI Desktop, or you've got your cloud-based. So for Mac lovers like me, this one's a terrific one. So as you can see here, we're just importing a local data set into my Power BI, which is now being referenced down there. So it's really that simple. I might take you through that one more time, just to kind of go through how simple it is. So I'm just going to pause this and start it again. And I'll stop talking about the difference between cloud-based and desktop-based Power BI. So this is as simple as it is to just get access to a data set on your local drive. So this is what comes up, and you go import or connect data, and go over to your get data section right there. So this is the first thing that you'll see. And you've got big live tiles there to talk about where your files might be sitting on your computer. This is my local drive, as you can see it. I've got my Excel file just sitting there ready to go on my desktop, and Power. So now I've got the choice to either import, which I'm doing now, or upload my data. So I'm just importing it now. It takes a matter of seconds, and voila, there is my data set ready to go, sitting there in what you might actually have noticed. They're part of the building blocks that we were talking about before. I'm actually just going to show you one thing super quick, because I think it's pretty cool. See that little quick insights button? Now, Power BI has the ability, using machine learning, to actually automatically generate insights into your data set without you doing a thing. So that is pretty cool, I think. All right, so that's how you access data. It's pretty simple, as you can see. So now that we've accessed data, what we need to start doing then is making it into pretty pictures. So as you can imagine, Power BI has access to a myriad of different types of visualization techniques. As you can see, you've got the standards, bar graphs, pie charts, histograms, line graphs, scatter plots, etc. But it can do also some of that more complex, data reduction type charting, whether it be bubble or step graphs, whatever it might be. That multi-dimensional pie one keeps popping up more and more. I think that's pretty fascinating. Basically, whatever you need, Power BI's got it covered. And the list every day just keeps growing and growing and growing. There's a very, very strong Power BI community that is developing new charts and new ways to visualize data every day. So there's no shortage of new of new data comparison charts and new data visualization tools that are coming along. So again, instead of just hearing me talking about it, what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you what it looks like. All right, so as you can see down my bottom left-hand corner, we've got the data set called Webinar Power BI data set that I imported into Power BI before. And what you can see now where my cursor is hovering over is that's all the different data that came from that data set. It's called Info Exchange. It's a mock data set that I put together called the Info Exchange Support Services. But as you can see, it's got some of those standard characteristics you would see of any not-for-profit organization, from disability, AOD, mental health. We've got our client ID, and then we've got some of those basic demographic functions, so demographic data, pardon me, age, ATSI, gender, nationality, etc. Support time, support open. So you can see that pretty much this data set reflects what you would normally see in your everyday service provision. But voila, look what we just did. We have just identified the breakdown of gender in our service provision, and now we're breaking down where the different people, where our clients are living, and now we can get even crazier and actually look at what the demographics or the gender demographics of our cohort are and where they're living as well. So as you can see, this is pretty cool. We can change our chart types from a pie graph to a line graph just there, so we can get some pretty amazing data, pretty amazing insights, and quite genuinely the click of a button. The other really cool part is when you can start drilling down and actually start getting those pieces of information or those insights you might need for your reporting. Like we've got 22% of the client count is male, living in what's the location there? I can't actually tell at the moment. But anyway, you get the picture. It's not only just the visualization, the hard data sits in there as well. And what you can see now is some of the custom configurations that we're doing to this chart to make it a little bit more readily easy. So we're doing service location by gender and changing the title. And as you can see there too, we can change all sorts of stuff, including the color graphics. We can change size. It's pretty darn it's pretty darn cool, as you can see. I'm just going to run through that again so you get a picture of how easy it is. As I said, we've got our data set that we've imported over there to our left. Now that data is populated in our right-hand fields, we can actually go through and start visualizing the areas of analyses we might want to look at. So first things first, we're going to go and choose a visualization type, and we're going to have a look at, in this case, a pie chart. Oh, in that one there too, we can actually get the raw data as we go, but we're just going to choose a pie chart for now. We can resize it just by pulling on that bottom arrow. The first thing we need to do is actually click our independent variable, which in this case will be the client ID, because it'll talk about how many clients there are, and put that in the values section. Now, when we want to go and represent the gender in this case, or what our dependent variable will be, we actually just go and click on gender, and that will actually populate, as you can see, that legend function, or now in our different sites or service location, Brunswick or City or Clayton, we can actually put that in our legend. So that's how easy it is, guys. It is super easy and it is super useful to use as well. And if we don't like the bar chart, and the more that I think about it, so if we don't like the pie chart, we can go and choose a bar chart quite easily. And the more that I think about it, I think that the bar chart actually provides us, the information is a lot more readily absorbed in the bar chart. So you can play around with it to actually work out what you want as well. And like I said before, you can actually drill down on specific sections and get that hard data as well. So yeah, it is super, super cool. So that's how you visualize data in Power BI. But don't forget, we've still got a couple more building blocks to go. So far, just a bit of a quick recap. We've looked at how we can access a simple CSV file and bring it into your Power BI environment. We've then had a look at how we can visualize that data that's coming from your CSV file and how we can visualize it in different ways and how we can customize and configure some of those visualizations as well. Now, where we start getting to some of the more entry-level complex areas of Power BI, so this is still about basic analyses as opposed to more complex data modeling, but it is a step up from just querying single data sets. We're actually going to look at how we can customize and develop what are called reports, so you can drill down into individual data sets at a higher level, or a much deeper level, I should say, to help you get those insights that you want. And you do this by using this thing called reports, which we said is one of the building blocks. So again, there's no point me sitting here and just talking you through it. You're actually going to see it in action. So in our last demonstration, we showed you a little bit about how to build a breakdown of gender of your client composition in a pie chart, and also too in a bar chart. Well, what if you wanted to know about genders, what genders we're using different services? So we've got here counselling, financial aid, housing assistance. Well, I'm glad that you asked, because that's what we're showing you. So we've got our gender breakdown of male, female, or undisclosed, or choose not to disclose, or asexual, or whatever it might be. And then we've actually got our different service provision outlined in that data set there. And we can actually see what the different types of, what different genders are using and to what extent. But this is when we start getting into the really cool things about using filter functions. So as I said, we've got our gender categories there. And what we can actually do is incorporate this filter function right in the report to actually start drilling down into these different areas of service provision, so you can see what any trends are, what the actual hard data is too. You can just click on it, as we said, and just start getting that hard data. And this is where we start seeing trends and insights, and it is super, super cool. Now, what we're going to be doing here is actually showing how simple it is to save it as well. So obviously, like any good product, you don't just want to build it and then just let it sit. So we're actually going to show you how simple it is just to save this report, because once you've saved it, it's going to be saved into your workspace, which is what's going on over to the left there. And that means you can access it a little bit later on. So just to recap on reports. Reports are super useful in developing more detail in the analyses you might require, and actually developing visualization functionalities that can help you dig a little bit deeper into your data set. So just going through it again quickly. So you might have developed a visualization on the different types of service provision you have and gender. And now what we're actually going to do is we're changing the title again, just to show you how simple that is. But in reports, we're actually going to start adding in those extra pieces of functionality, so you can query your data and get access to those insights super quick. Now, the way that I've shown you how to do this in this presentation now is by adding that filter functionality, which we're about to do in a second. So we decide we want to filter by gender, which we bring down there. We could also filter by nationality or age or Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander identity as well. And that way we can see that counselling is predominantly used by males over females, and that financial aid is predominantly used over females over males and gender neutrally identified. So this is pretty cool, huh? I think this is great. And the really cool thing too is when we get into that more advanced stuff, it's very simple to put in some of that historical data, say from over the last 10 years. You can actually start querying what are the trends of men or women or gender binary or gender neutral people using your counselling or your financial services provision over time. So you can actually see increases in different types of demographics in your organization and what they're using your services for. It is super cool. And this is just the entry level stuff too. So yeah, you can see why I get pretty excited by this stuff. All right, so we've gone ahead and built a report. So just again recapping, we've accessed the local data set from on our desktop. Very simple to do. We have generated a visualization. So we've generated a pie chart. Didn't really like the look of it, so we looked at the bar chart and thought, actually, that's probably a better way to go. And we're able to see what different demographics of your service users are using at different sites. After we did that, we went across and we actually had a look at what the different gender composition was in accessing your services, and we added a filter function in and saved that as a report, because we think that is something that we might use a bit later on, or something that we might want to send to a colleague or have ready access to it. Now here's where we get to that famous word, which I think everybody goes a little bit silly for, which is called the dashboard. Everybody wants a dashboard. Everybody, it's one of the things that we do a lot in my team is we help organizations leverage their data. And the first thing everybody says to me is, we want a dashboard. I want a dashboard. And I kind of say, cool, man, what? What do you want in that? What do you want in your dashboard? I thought you wanted insights. But a dashboard is just a representation of different insights. But for the technical part of Power BI, a dashboard is a canvas that has one or more tiles or widgets. Each tile is made up of one visualization, and these visualizations can come from a myriad of data sets or reports that we've showed previously in our last slides in the building blocks. Visualizations and reports are then pinned to this dashboard, and they're very interactive and they talk to each other. But they can also be shared too, which is super cool. So like I said before, no point me sitting here and just talking about it. Why don't we sit in action? See it in action. So you can see that we have accessed our data set. We've generated some reports, and now we are going to build ourselves a dashboard. So all these reports that you see there to my left, that they are as simple to make as you've seen in the last 20 minutes or so, but they've all got a different insight, or they all talk to a different part of service provision that actually makes up our organization as a whole. But we want to see all that together. So first thing, let's create a dashboard. Go to that amazing little X or little cross up the top, and we're going to say create a dashboard, and we are going to call it Decisions with Data. You could call this organizational overview. You could call it whatever you might want to. So now we've got our dashboard environment set up. We are going to go down and actually start looking at the reports we've already created. You might recognize this one. This has a little pin function. We are going to pin this visualization to an existing dashboard, the one that we've just created, which comes up right there, and it's now pinned. Now we're going to do that with the rest of these visualizations that we brought up before. This is a really cool visualization that I like. It looks simple, but it's super powerful. It's actually just the raw numbers, but when you see those raw numbers next to some visualizations, it's really, really cool. But the service location there, so we're going to pin that again to our existing dashboard. One that's pretty important to everybody as well is the support by month. So where are our spike in services? What happens in August, for example, in that waterfall chart there is interesting to us, and why is there a big boost around the December period? And when are we closing support periods as well? So these are all pre-generated, very easy to do. But once we've actually pinned these to our dashboard, we can go to the dashboard, or we can go there, either way. Ta-da! And now we've actually got all these insights ready to go in the one spot. So as you can see, the question is though, where did that little drill down function go? The one that we enjoyed building before? Well, good thing you asked, because it's still there. It's now just sitting behind. So when we go into one of these reports, let's go back to when we go back into one of these reports, you can actually see that that drill down function is here behind the tile. So here I am just resizing it as well to make it a little bit more visually appealing. And so we can actually see all the different types of reports in the one spot. It's super easy to customize. It's really cool. I really want to stress this though. This is a really, really simple demonstration. We're only scratching the surface of what Power BI can do and how it can be manually manipulated. It is cool as. See, this is the one before. Sitting behind that dashboard tile is our report, and within our report, we can actually drill down onto that service provision as well. Super cool and super easy. So yeah, I mean, as we can see, it's just a really, really powerful tool that helps us kind of get a really great snapshot and overview of our organization. What we're going through here is the Q&A function as well, which I won't talk about too much at the moment. We'll talk about it a little later on, but that's actually embedded machine learning in the in Power BI. But this is an example dashboard, one that it's static at the moment, but I've built up to basically give you a bit of an overview over how complex and how much information you can put into one dashboard. The other great thing too is it's all very dynamic. So if you click on one area of this report, all the different areas of this dashboard will be affected. All right, so that's a really, really basic overview of how we can query, or how we can access, import, query, and visualize data in Power BI, and how then we can wrap up different data sources into one super dashboard, so we can actually get all that information in the one spot to help our service provision and to help meet the objectives that we talked about at the start of this session. You know, getting those insights to help our service provision and help our service users, which is obviously paramount to why we're here. But man, like what I just showed you is just the beginning of what Power BI can do. Now, just before we were wrapping up on that last piece, I was showing you that this piece of functionality called querying data. This is machine learning that's built into Power BI that basically can read or query your data just by typing it in. So instead of actually going through and clicking down the data, I think we've all been there where we've tried to find different pieces of data, or we've been searching through these massive data sets. You can actually ask it directly. For example, I'm doing it right now. You can see males and females. You can see all the different gender compositions coming up down there in terms of nationality. You can actually query this data set in real time. This sort of functionality is very, very useful in terms of getting those quick insights. So when we're out and we might be hosting an event, or we might be talking about our service provision, or we might be trying to work out, we might be at a partnership event and we want to find out or we want to be able to demonstrate some of the stuff we do, we can actually go to this dashboard and ask it straight away. How many of our service users identify as male? How many of our service users had a case closed in October? How many of our service users had a period of support open in December? All that sort of stuff, you know, how many clients visited our Brunswick site, whatever it might be. It is incredibly powerful. I think it's one of those ones that we kind of take a little bit for granted. But when you actually start using it in everyday practice, it's amazing at what you can actually achieve through it. So that's one of the more advanced features. I want to separate advanced features as opposed to advanced data modeling. They're two different things. So when we talk about a feature, it's a built-in part of Power BI that we can use straight out of the box. When we talk about advanced data modeling, for example, we're talking about DAX and all that wonderful things about manipulating data before it hits that visualization piece as well. So this can just be used straight out of the box, and any data set you populate can actually be read, and you can use it straight away, which is really cool. This one's super cool as well too. So how many times have you had to build a spreadsheet, you build a pie graph or a histogram or a scatter plot or whatever in Excel, and then you do the good old copy paste in into your bulk of an email or into a Word document or whatever it might be. And then it's not very dynamic. It's just a static image, which has some power, but it's quite cumbersome. You know, you have to get the right image and you build the right image, and then you have to copy it and paste it and resize it and all that stuff. The cool thing about Power BI is you can just share this dashboard straight away. So there you go. There's Matt Walton. Some of you might have actually attended a few of his webinars. You know, he and I have worked together for some time. And this is me going through an example of how easy it is just to share my dashboard with Matt, just like that. So he'll receive an email which would say, hey, Sam Hedbury just sent you a dashboard. And Matt would actually receive this, what you're seeing out here, and be able to look at the data, but also be able to query the data as well. He'd be able to click on it, depending on the permission that you give him, obviously give them. You'll be able to click on the data set and he'll be able to have a look at it, play around with it, and play around with some of that functionality and visualization as well. So again, it's one of those things I think we take for granted, but this sharing function is really, really cool. It's not only limited to sharing individually, you can share to a SharePoint site. You can actually have Power BI like this, one of your dashboards automatically represented in a SharePoint site, or you can embed it into PowerPoint. You can embed it into all sorts of different communication tools and then just share it away as well. So it's really, really cool. Now, this other one too, Quick Insights, is super, super cool. Now, Quick Insights, so when you upload a data set to Power BI, the machine learning and a few of the algorithms running in the background automatically do this thing that they automatically query the data to look for trends and patterns that are kind of pre-populated into it, which they're calling Quick Insights. So if you just go up there and you click on Quick Insights, and you just press this View Insights button, ta-da! So that data set was raw when we put up, and Power BI has just gone and queried the data and come up with a whole bunch of stuff that you might not have even thought of, or it just saved you a whole bunch of time. All these reports that you're seeing here are very interactive, as you would expect them to be, and they all talk to each other as well. So if you click on one, the others are being affected as well. It is super, super cool. So this is machine learning in action. And it also can just save you time at the front end, or if you don't have time to really do some of that data analysis, you've got Quick Insights to help you, get some of that information readily. I was just thinking about, if you had a board report due, and you might have left it to the last minute, and instead of just going in and doing the manual manipulation in your Excel, you can just whack it up in Power BI. And then just do these quick insights and let Power BI tell you what's been going on in your service provision as well. Obviously, you can vet it, let's not let the machines take over just yet, but you vet the information. But as you can see, it is a pretty cool tool. So again, this is one of those functions, one of those deeper functions that are available out of the box. So your data hasn't changed. There's been no data analyses, there's been no, well, this is data analysis, sorry, I should say, but there's been no data modeling or there's been no data cleansing or any of that ETL process. It's a functionality straight out of the box, but it is super, super cool and super, super powerful. But when we talk about that analyses and more or deeper data modeling, we are looking into some of the deeper areas that Power BI can help you with and is very, very capable of doing, just as capable as any other tool out there. The really cool part is that Power BI can query data from multiple sources, as we said, can do some of those more advanced data analyses are too, so regression analysis or analyses, correlation coefficients, so some of that stuff as well. You can write DAX. I'm not sure if any of you know about DAX, but it's it's a way that you can shape and manipulate data to help you to see different sorts of trends and insights, which is pretty cool. You can query and align your data using with existing systems using APIs and OData as well. So if you've got a MyOb system or if you're using Dynamics or Salesforce as a CRM, you can actually just have a direct link between Power BI and those systems. So it means that any time your database is being updated, so is your visualizations. It's pretty great. And if you're at the stage, and oh gosh, if you are, I'd be so excited to hang out with you and talk some more about using big data, maybe some predictive analytics or long-term predictive analytics or Bayesian theory, whatever it might be. Power BI uses Spark and Azure HC Insight. And this kind of goes back to one, or it uses Hadoop and a whole bunch of other things too. But this is one of the things that I talked about initially. Is one of the reasons why I love Power BI is because it works so easily with the Office 365 and broader Microsoft suite, and Azure and Microsoft with their data lakes, etc., are doing some amazing things in that advanced data modeling and predictive analytics and big data space. So if that's something your organization is looking at, Power BI can go with you on that journey. So I think that the point that I'm trying to make in this slide is that Power BI can help you if you're a novice and you're just looking to do some board reporting, do the basics, do historical analyses on service provision and service use or financial allocations, whatever it might be, or revenue modeling, can do some of that stuff. But it can also join you in the journey if you want to go and mature as an organization and looking at data as a way of informing service provision in the long term as well. So it's pretty cool. So what we've covered today, as we're rounding to the end of the session, is we've gone through and we've talked about business intelligence in the not-for-profit sector and how the sector is growing in that space, and how really I don't think of us as the third sector anymore. I think of us as I think of us as a very big and growing sector, and I think BI and BI tools is going to be central to that growth in the coming years as well. Before talking about the broader BI tools that are out there, there's lots, and moving on to Power BI, which is the focus of this presentation. I would say again too that because I promote Power BI, I promote all of them really. I promote using data in service provision. I wouldn't ever hold anybody back. I'd always recommend people go and find what's right for you. So play with the Tableaus, play with the Google Data Studios, play with ClickSense, play with all those. And if they feel comfortable with you and you're finding you're having no tech difficulties, great, use them, enjoy them. So yeah, but no, in this session we did introduce Power BI and the core building blocks of how easy it is to access data, how easy it is to build a visualization, how easy it is to then build a report which has some ability to drill a bit deeper into the data and get insights, and then how we can actually build a dashboard, generated from a myriad of different reports that might have come from different data sources as well. We then looked into some of the deeper functionality in terms of how you can query data directly using machine learning, and then how you can share your data sets readily and easily across your organization and outside of your organization as well. Before I just to stop on that one, the data sharing piece is very interesting because you can customize how much you share and who with as well, but we don't have time to focus on that. So you can actually customize who sees what and how, which I think is really cool. As well as looking into some of those that quick insights functionality. So where Power BI has some of that those algorithms pre-built in to help you just automatically query your data sets if you have a board report due, for example. And then we talked about going deeper into data analyses as well. So look, I'm about out of time. So the best thing that I can really say here is thank you so much for joining me over the last hour. if you hadn't picked up, I love data. But I love what data can do in terms of impacting our services. And yeah, I hope if any of you feel that I could ever be of help, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I guess I just encourage you to pick up Power BI and start having a play. And if you find that you need a little bit more support, or just get in touch, I'd love to hear from you. So that's enough from me, and I'll hand back over to Connecting Up.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks so much for that. Thanks for presenting today, and thanks everyone for joining us. It looks like we haven't got any questions at the moment, so we might just go ahead and wrap up the webinar. If you do have any questions that come back to you later or any feedback, just send that through to events@connectingup.org. We'll flick that through to Sam, and then he can go ahead and have a look at that offline. Otherwise, don't forget, you all will be sent a recording, a link to the recording that is, within the next week or so, so do keep an eye out on your inbox. Obviously, Sam's got his contact details up there, as he mentioned. Feel free to get in touch with them as well. Otherwise, yeah, thanks so much, Sam, for presenting. Thanks, everyone, for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.